Harbridge, and welcome to our Wednesday night live. We're going to wait a couple minutes here for people to get in. We were having some issues here with going live with this, and hopefully everybody makes it in and finds this. We're going to be working tonight doing the clay witches is what I'll be showing you tonight. We'll be showing you step by step how to do that. And if you guys are interested in the mystery box, I see people are already typing in mystery box. Feel free to type that in. If you're not familiar with the mystery box, the way that works is we've got a medium flat rate shipping box that's full of goodies. I don't tell you exactly what's in that box, but if you say mystery box in the comments during the first 10 minutes of the live, my wife Janine is here. She's watching for those comments. She'll be putting your name in a bowl, and we'll draw a name out toward the end, and then the person whose name is drawn gets the option to purchase the mystery box for $50. It's usually over $100 worth of merchandise that's in that box. And the hint that I'll give you about the mystery box tonight is it pretty much has nothing to do with what we're doing tonight. So that makes it a complete mystery. So again, if you want to be part of the mystery box, one person will be drawn. If you're watching this recording the next day, the next night, weeks later, you don't need to comment mystery box because the mystery box is only good for those who are in for the live, and it's the first 10 minutes. About the 10-minute mark, we'll cut it off for people to be able to register. So we'll be going back to the mystery box in a little while. I'm going to stick that aside here, and we will get started. The witch that we're going to be doing, I actually broke the foot off of this one, but I'll bring her up a little bit closer. She is done over a clay cone, very similar to the gnomes that I've done in the past. She's traveled a little bit and kind of a little bit beat up. But you can do big ones like this, you can do small ones, you can do them in any size. We're going to do a large one just like her tonight. You'll notice the setting's a little bit different here. We are working in the classroom space in our studio now. We were able to kind of make some room in here. This has been a packing area for the last about 8 months, and we're finally able to work in here. So we've got a lot more space. So we're going to be moving the camera around to show you some different things. So we're going to be working with a cone shape, and these cones are ceramic bisque, and I get people that ask, can I work on a styrofoam cone? And when I originally started with the idea of making these gnomes and trees and all the different things you've seen me do on these cones, I went and bought one of those styrofoam cones. And what I found is when I started pressing the clay on that cone, the styrofoam is fairly soft, and it made indentations and dents on the cone. And so then when I went to pull the cone out, the clay was getting stuck on the cone, and I ended up breaking the cone apart to get it. And so long term, it would have worked to do 1 or 2 pieces, but long term to do a lot of pieces, it wasn't going to work really well. And these cones come in, this is the large 21-inch size cone. We have a smaller 12-inch cone, and then last year we came out with this little mini 7-inch cone. And you'll notice on the bottom of these, there is a little area that sticks out. And the reason we redesigned this mold several years back, because in a workshop I had people building witches on these cones, and it was a technique where we were draping fabric in slip and putting it over the piece. And about an hour into the class, somebody said, when do we take the cone out? And I said, that was step 2. You should have done that about 45 minutes ago. And at that point, it was going to be very difficult to get the pieces off of the cone. And when we tried, the pieces had shrunk and got real tight on the cone, and we had a hard time getting them off of there. And so this little area here is an area that you don't cover with clay. So as I start to cover the cone with clay, I'm going to avoid this area. And what that does is in workshops, it allows me to see when I walk around, if that part is sticking out, I know that the person hasn't taken their piece off the cone, and I can remind them if they should have already done it at that point. It also kind of stabilizes the cone, but you do not build over this with clay. That part should stick out on there. The other, got a question?
There's a few people who are commenting that they can't hear you.
That you can't hear.
A couple people.
All right. If you can hear, please comment if you can hear. I'm going to look at the volume here.
I mean, like, not that they can't hear you at all, but like it's just not loud enough. They can barely hear you. They should talk close. Somebody else said he's loud for them. So. Okay,
and the microphone literally is.
Oh, other people said they hear you just fine.
Okay, so 12 inches from my mouth. So if you're having a hard time hearing me,
fine. Okay, sound is fine for.
Okay. All right.
Oh, another person said very low. I guess it's all over the place. So.
Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, the microphone is 12 inches away from my face, and I'm talking at a normal sound here. So I don't know if you can turn up the volume on your computers or your devices that you're listening on, if that will help.
About one other question is what color is the green? I think on the witch.
That actually, we'll talk a little bit about the colors on there before the end. That was done with acrylics and it's dry brushed, and you can do fired glazes or non-fired finishes on that piece. I don't know specifically. There's a combination of different greens on there. There's a darker green and then kind of a brighter Irish type green that's on there as well. All right, so the first thing that we want to do on the cone is to wrap it with newspaper. We can work directly on the cone with the clay, but if you wrap this in newspaper, it makes it a lot easier for the clay to slide off. And so I usually wrap the cone, and then I take a little piece of tape and I tape the paper in place, and I should have had this tape up before I let go of the paper. So I wrap it around, and then I just add a piece of tape. Now, I don't have to build all the way to the bottom of this cone. I'm working on the large cone, and the advantage to the large cone is I can go halfway down, I can go 3/4 of the way down when I'm working with clay. And so I'm going to be working with a raku clay body. And the reason I like the raku clay body is because it has some sand in it, and that kind of helps to keep the clay stable and gives it support. You can work with a low fire clay body, you can work with a mid-range clay body. A lot of the mid-range clay bodies do have sand or grog in the clay. And the more sand and grog you have in the clay, the more gritty it's going to feel. So if I take the clay and I kind of pinch it between my finger and my thumb here, and I look real closely at that clay, I can see in this clay there is fine sand in the clay. When you get into grog, into some of the higher fire or mid-range clays, that grog is actually busted up fire brick, and it will feel a lot coarser on your hands. When you throw on a wheel with a groggy clay body, it can be really rough on your hands and really bang your hands up. This has some sand in it that just makes it that when I pull this piece off of the cone, I don't have to worry about the clay just flopping over. If I use a smooth clay body that doesn't have sand, it'll work perfectly fine. I just encourage people to make it a little bit thicker so that they've got the stability of the piece. And so a low fire white, a low fire red, any of those types of clays will work. Again, mid-range will work as well. I'm using a clay slicer here, and I'm just going to flip the camera down here. So when I cut the clay, you can use the traditional wire cutters or this clay slicer. You can adjust this little bar to be whatever thickness you want the clay to be. So I'm going to go to about a 1/2 inch thickness on here, and I'm going to cut off a bunch of slabs of this clay, and I'm going to set them aside here. I could also use a slab roller or a rolling pin to roll this clay out, but when I'm teaching workshops, I don't always have the ability to have a slab roller for everybody to use, and I find that a lot of times everybody will stand around to use a slab roller when there are alternative methods of rolling pins or the technique that I'm going to show you guys, just using these pieces of clay. And that's one of the things I really like about this clay cutter is I can cut this to the exact thickness that I want, and I don't have to sit here and flatten these pieces of clay out. And then I'm just going to take them, and I'm going to start up at the top of the cone, and I'm going to wrap this clay around. And as I bring that around, I want the clay to overlap a little bit. Where there's extra clay on there, I'm just going to tear that away. And I'm going to squeeze that to the cone. And the goal here is to cover the entire cone with clay, or as far down as I want to go. So I'll keep taking slabs that I've cut where the pieces of clay meet. I just kind of run my finger and mash that clay together. The reason I start at the top of the cone is because if I start on the side, the clay just wants to slide down. And I can't tell you how many times in workshops I have people that will start at the bottom of the cone. And so if you start at the top, it gives you something to anchor to as you work your way down. And you'll always slightly overlap those pieces of clay. And where they overlap a lot, you just tear away that excess clay and save those pieces, because you'll probably be filling in a little bit. At this point, I'm not worried about getting the clay perfectly smooth on here. I just want to have it so that it's attached, and so that as much of the surface as I want covered with clay gets covered. And it will be a little bit uneven at this point too, where it overlaps. It's going to be a little bit thicker, and don't worry too much about those spots at this point, because we're going to go over and we're going to smooth out the clay on here and kind of even that out in just a minute. So I'm using those pieces that I tore off, and I'm kind of sticking those. I'm going to flip the camera down here a little bit onto the bottom. You can see I'm not going all the way to the bottom of the cone. I'm going to stop at this point, and then I'm going to take a flexible metal rib. Now there are different types of ribs, and I brought the two different types out here that I have. These flexible ones are steel ribs, and what I like about these is I can kind of bend them and follow and get it to kind of round on the piece, versus the aluminum scrapers. Okay, the aluminum ones generally are not very flexible. They're very, very rigid. They will flex, but they won't flex like the steel ones. See how easily that flexes, where the aluminum ones don't. So if you're working on a flat slab and you need something really rigid, those steel scrapers work really well. If you want something that's flexible, the aluminum work really well. If you want something flexible, it's the steel scrapers that you want to work with. Most of the time I'm working with the steel.
There's a question about the cutter, I believe. It says it's supposed to lock in place. Mine doesn't, and my slabs aren't even.
It doesn't have like a lock on it, but I use both of my thumbs usually to adjust this. Now I can get it to be a little bit, I don't know if it's easy to see, it's a little bit shorter on this side and a little bit longer if I don't have them straight, but it should be pretty snug as you pull it down. And so as you slide that up on there, I mean, that should stay. This, I can do this with it, and this isn't sliding up and down. So if it's sliding up and down really super easy on there, I would try, maybe it may have gotten, this part may have gotten bent a little bit. Maybe just try pulling that out and see, or pushing it in, and see if that'll do it. Otherwise, contact me if you got it from me and it was like that. Let me know. We don't check them, I guess, before we ship them. That it's possible that something had happened to one of them and that it wasn't tight, but it should be pretty snug. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking that rib and I'm just dragging it across the cone, and so where the pieces of clay overlap, I want to really smooth that out and blend that in. And I'm also going to use this rib then to go over and remove any clay that is too thick on here. Now again, I could have started out with one big slab of clay and put that on here, but not everybody has a slab roller or wants to mess around with rolling pins. So this is an easy way to cover your cone. And at this point too, I'm not looking to make this perfectly smooth, because we're going to do a lot of manipulating. What I'm looking for, and what I'm doing, is I'm dragging this down from the top, and I'm smoothing, and the rib is kind of bent like this as I'm doing this, so it follows the rounded contour. You can see there's a little bit of a buildup of clay on here. And that is where I'm dragging across areas where there was a bump of clay where it overlapped. I'm actually pulling that clay off and smoothing it down to fill in any low areas. You don't want to have clay pieces that are drastically different in thickness, where there were overlap areas. If I had, the slabs of clay that I cut were about 1/2 inch. If I have areas of this that are 1 inch thick, that's probably not going to be good, because as it dries, it shrinks, and as it shrinks, if you have thick areas, they won't dry as quickly. You can get some cracking in between where you have thin and thick areas. So you want to try to get it somewhat uniformly thin. Just by dragging this rib down, I'm taking more and more clay off and filling in any little pockets on here. And this is compressing the clay. Occasionally I'll go from the bottom up. Again, I'm not looking for perfectly smooth. I'm just trying to make it uniformly thick. And what I look for when I'm teaching this in a workshop is, if I can see those lines where those pieces of clay were, I know that they need to do some more work with the rib. Now on the bottom, this isn't real even, and that's fine. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just a wooden tool that comes in a basic pottery set, and I'm going to go around and I'm going to cut away. And first I just go and make a line all the way around of where I'm going to cut, and then I just take that tool and I just kind of work it into the clay to cut away the excess clay. This same thing is done for those of you who've been asking about the trees and the gnomes. I will be doing some lives on the trees and gnomes coming up, but the first step is the same as we're doing right now, covering the cone.
If it was the fall leaf, if you made the fall leaf tree this way.
Yep, the fall leaf tree that you see back here starts out with solid clay on that cone. Now I'm just going to run my fingers kind of down and smooth out some of those rough bumps on there. Any of you who've done workshops with me know that I don't like putting water on the table, because at this point a lot of people would have their sponge and they'd be dousing this with water to get it smooth. We're not worried about making this perfectly smooth. I'm just running my fingers over it to get rid of some of the rough bumps and things that are on there. We're going to add the rim on here, and the rim on the witch's hat is a little different from the gnomes because it's thin and it's not so thick. But we do basically the same thing. We're going to do a coil of clay, and the coil doesn't need to be perfect as far as being a perfect coil. I mean, you could use an extruder to do this, but we're going to be pinching this clay out on her hat, so it doesn't matter if it's a perfect, perfectly even coil. You want to have this about the thickness of your thumb or a little thicker. Where on the gnomes, a lot of times I say the thickness of your pinky. Because this hat, we're going to pull this out a little bit further, and you need to determine then, where do you want the face on your witch? And so if I want her face to fill in this area, I'm going to do the rim of her hat, and I'm just going to kind of stick this coil and continue to add more coil around onto the back side, and I'll kind of squish it together where the two coils meet. Now, a lot of you are like, oh my gosh, shouldn't you be scoring that and adding slip in there? Normally, when you would add two pieces of clay together, you would do scoring, which is scratching lines, and then putting slip, which is liquid clay, in between. But what we're going to do with this is we're going to take and we're going to mash this. So I'm taking my thumb, I'm going to bring this up closer to the camera so you can see this. I'm taking my thumb, well, I can use my finger here because I'm standing now holding it, but I'm going to squish this clay into the cone. I'm going to squish it on the top, and I'm going to squish it on the bottom. But I still want to leave the clay sticking out, so I'm not squishing the whole coil flat. What I'm doing is I'm attaching it on the top, and when this is sitting flat like this on the surface, I can use my thumb to kind of drag the clay up and squish it into the cone, and then I can go on the bottom and squish the bottom side into the cone. Now on the gnomes, you normally just squish the top in, But because we're going to take this and pinch this out on this hat, we have a little bit of extra clay here, and this is going to come straight out, and so we want that support of it being attached well on the bottom when we bring that out. Again, I'm not worried about this being perfectly smooth, but I'm just going to go and kind of blend that and drag my thumb across it to get it blended into the top of the cone well. And now at this point is when I want to take it off of the cone, because the next step is going to be to manipulate the top of the hat and get that bend. And so when I remove it from the cone, I pick it up and I put my hand inside and I kind of take my fingers and my thumb and I kind of stick that into the inside, and then I twist my arm and I pull the cone out, so I've got this giant cone stuck to my hand, and I can set that down. And the paper that's left on the cone, you can leave that right in there, and you can just pinch that and put that up inside. If you ever have that your piece is kind of collapsing, you can stuff newspaper inside to give it extra support. If your piece, if you think it doesn't need the support, you can take and you can twist this paper and actually pull it out from the inside as well. I'm just going to leave it in there as a little bit of extra support. I'm going to work on, let me get this cone out of here. I'm going to work on a board. So I've got a turntable here on the top of my stool, and I don't want to work right on this turntable because the clay will kind of stick to that. So I want to work on a surface that it won't stick to. And so these project boards that I have, they're a pressed board. The clay doesn't stick to. They're great to work with. You could put a piece of drywall. You could put a few layers of newspaper under there, just something to make sure that it doesn't stick to the surface that you're working on. Now, when I go to bend this hat, I don't want to just go like this and twist it, because there's a good chance that I'm going to snap it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of pinch and kind of pull. And so I'll pinch and pull and just do it slowly. So I work my way to the top, kind of pinching it and pulling it to a point, and I keep doing that until I get this bent over to the direction that I want. If you do it too quickly, you're just going to snap the clay off on the top. And so you're just going to kind of slowly work this and bring it around to be as twisted as you want it to be. Be careful, because if you start to see rips in here, you can take a little bit of clay and mash it in there. But if you see it ripping, either A, your piece you've made too thin, or B, you've done it too quickly and just bent it, and you've stretched the clay and it just snaps or rips open on there. All right. So now that I've got the hat to the angle that I want, the twist on there, you're going to get some twists in the clay. If you don't like that, you can go back and you can kind of smooth that with your finger. Again, I avoid water at this point, because water running down on the piece creates problems where it's going to be sitting in a puddle of water, and it's going to make the bottom of your piece really weak. Now got a question?
Where do you get the project boards?
The project boards, I get those through Continental Clay. I used to sell those. They're fairly inexpensive. They're like $7, $8 for the project boards. And with the free shipping on our website, it just was so costly with the size of the box we had to use and the weight of them to offer free shipping. So we did discontinue them. But they're a great product, and Continental Clay has those. And their website is continentalclay.com. Otherwise, drywall with duct tape around the edges to prevent the chunks of plaster from falling out work great too. So on the hat now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go along and I'm going to pinch what's left of that coil, and that is going to bring out her hat. And I'll just work my way all the way around. And if it gets kind of ruffly, that's okay. So this is what we've got then for the rim of her hat. Now, if you want a bigger rim on the hat, do a thicker coil of clay to start out. You can always manipulate this and ruffle it some more if you want. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to make her nose. And keep in mind this is a witch's nose, so she's probably not going to have a perfect nose. You could probably use my nose to model after. But usually kind of big and rough. It doesn't need to be perfectly smooth. It's almost like a beak that I'm making, just forming this with the clay. And you can make it as pointed and as long as you want. And I'm just working this with my fingers. And then I'll decide based on where the twist is in the hat where I want to put her face. And so her nose I'm going to add right about here. And this is where we're sticking this on. And I do recommend scoring and slipping parts like this. And so I'm going to use my handy little Zim retractable scoring tool. And on the back side, I'm going to score, scratching in lines. And then where I want to attach it, I'm going to score as well. And the reason you do scoring is so that when you put these two pieces together, you kind of wiggle them. We're going to put some slip in there, some liquid clay. We're going to wiggle it, and we're going to then mash it into her face so that it kind of sticks out. And I've got a little cup of slip here. Generally, you want to make sure the slip you're working with is compatible and shrinks at the same rate as the clay body that you're working with. And this happens to be slip that I use for casting. It's a little bit grayer in color, but it fires out more white, where the Raku fires out more pink. But I know that they are compatible, and I don't have to worry about pieces falling off. If you use two different clay bodies that aren't compatible, you can run into where the clay shrinks more in firing, and the piece can actually fall off if one shrinks more than the other. And I'm going to just use my thumb and finger here to kind of attach this nose, and I can kind of bring that out and make it as pointed as I want and form it and manipulate it to be the shape that I want that to be. Take this in a little bit more so it's not sticking out too much like a carrot nose. It was kind of looking like a snowman nose there for a minute. And again, I'm not worried about everything being perfectly smooth. And the next thing I'm going to do is take some clay and I'm going to make the eyes. And so a lot of times people in workshops will say, oh, I'm never good. Oh, and the mystery box, I forgot to announce that that's done. We're already a half hour into it. So Janine is actually cutting all the names apart for the mystery box tonight. So people often, they take a piece of clay, they roll a ball of clay, and then they try to get another one that's the same size. So what I usually suggest is make a coil of clay that's about the amount of 2 eyeballs, and then cut that coil in half. And that way you should have, and then if you don't drop it on the floor, all right, so that one is rolled way under the table, so I'm going to do this again. Roll your coil of clay, kind of flatten it out on the ends, and then cut it in half. And that way you should have fairly close to equal amounts of clay. And then roll each of those into a ball. And that's a good way to get an even size balls of clay.
Can you dissolve some of the clay you're using into slip to attach them?
Yeah, and that's a really good way to do it. If you don't have slip that is used for casting, just take some of this clay and dissolve it. And the best way to do it is to let the clay dry out. So let some pieces dry out ahead of time. If that clay is dry, it dissolves a lot easier. If you put a wet piece of clay in a cup of water, it doesn't dissolve and turn to a liquid. You really have to squish it and work it in that bowl to get this softened into a liquid state. So yeah, let that dry out. Then on her eyes, I kind of flattened them. So then I just kind of pinch that ball of clay so that they're kind of flattened, smooth out any little ridges or lines that are in there. Do the same thing with the other eye. And then I kind of put them next to each other or put them on top of each other to make sure they're about the same size. And we're going to add these onto the piece. And again, we're going to do scoring on the back side, and we're going to do scoring where the eyes are going to attach.
Oh, how thin did you make the outside rim of her hat?
I pinched it fairly thin, so it's probably 1/8 of an inch thick at the rim. When I add these eyes, when I put them on, I'm going to kind of twist them like this, because that will kind of lock the score marks together. When you're just sticking pieces on and you're not squishing it in, I always tell people to kind of twist it like that so that those scratches kind of lock together, and you'll get a lot better adhesion than if you just stick them on. And what I do in workshops is I'll go, when people add pieces on, and I'll go like this and I'll grab them and I'll wiggle them. If they pop off really easily, I know that they need to add a little bit more, or they need to press them on and twist them a little bit more as they put those on there. The mouth on here, the one that I did back here, the sample, I actually took a needle tool and I scratched the smile in her face like this. And it helped me a lot to be able to see that her mouth was on there. But honestly, when I went to paint it, it was kind of a pain to paint that. So I would recommend just leaving it smooth and just paint your mouth on after it's fired, or if you're going to work with underglazes before it's fired, you can add or paint the mouth on rather than scratching it in and then trying to paint inside of that indented line on there. The next thing to do is to add the strip around her hat and the medallion, and that can be done just taking and rolling a coil of clay or using an extruder to make a coil that will fit around the rim of her hat. And this too is probably about the diameter or thickness of my thumb. Might be getting a little bit thinner, but I want to have one long continuous coil that will go all the way around on here. So I'm going to stretch this a little bit more. So it fits all the way around. And then what I'll do is take something to add texture. I'm going to flip the camera back down here. So I've got my coil, and I want to use something to add texture within, or to flatten and add texture to this. So I can take stamps, I can take anything, and I can press, and that will flatten out that coil, and it will add texture. So I'm using right now just this kind of funky flower stamp to add some texture to this band. And this too, it doesn't have to be perfectly even. I'm flattening this so that it's probably between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch thick. And I've got my strip, and then that is going to go around there. Now look what happens when you do the stamping. It flattens it out and makes it a little bit longer, which is okay because we're just going to cut part of that away. But we're going to make the joint in the front rather than the back. So I'm going to flip this around, and I'm just going to cut off with the needle tool that little extra chunk that's on there. And we're going to score and slip this piece as well. So I'm just going to take the scoring tool and I'm going to scratch the whole back of that coil. And then on the hat itself, I'm going to go around and scratch and score where that's going to attach. I'm going to add slip to the back side, and then I'll attach that. Now the reason I do this joint in the front is so that I can take and create a medallion that will cover that in the front. So I'm going to do a ball of clay. I'm going to flatten it so it's about the size that I want it to be, and then I'll use a stamp. I'm going to use this kind of flowery medallion stamp. I'm going to press that into that ball of clay, or that disc of clay, to add the texture, and then this I will score and slip to add onto the front. So using my scoring tool to score the back side, and to score the front of this. Even though there's texture in there, I'm still going to score it. I'm going to add some slip. And when I attach that on there, I'm going to kind of twist it in a circle a little bit so that that is on her hat and is attached well. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add the hair. And so clay extruders work great for this. You can sit and hand roll the coils, but this extruder makes it a whole lot easier. There is a 12 die attachment that we sell on our website, and that goes into the end. It just drops into the inside. The Shimpo, the Nidec Shimpo extruder comes with a 12-hole die. Unfortunately, those are out of stock again. We've gotten multiple shipments of them in, and we keep running out of those. We've got, I think, about 4 or 5 of these Kemper ones in stock, and we've got somebody making these 12-hole dies for us. To load the extruder, you push in on this plunger so that you can get the plunger on the inside to pull back. And so when I push in on that trigger and pull back on the plunger, it opens up the inside of the extruder so I can take and drop clay down inside. Now, doing just this one witch, I don't need a ton of coils, so I didn't really need to probably pull it back as far as I did. I'm going to put about this much clay, a handful of clay, into the extruder, and that probably will be enough. I can drop that down inside, attach the end that has the die. And these dies are all interchangeable. They'll fit either the Kemper extruder or the Nidec Shimpo extruder. And most people will squeeze the trigger like this, like it's a gun, and that's fine. I'm moving this plunger in because I didn't fill the whole tube with clay. And so right now I'm squeezing it really easily and fast, and it's now coming into contact with the clay. And it gets to be a little bit harder than I can feel now that I'm against the clay. And so a lot of times what I do is I hold the extruder upside down, and then I can get better leverage on this to pull the trigger. If you really have a hard time getting that trigger, put this on the table and then take your hand and push down this way. And I'm going to do it on my knee here. And when I do that, I get really good leverage because I can push my whole arm down as I come down, and I get the strands of clay coming out. And so I'm going to do some a little bit longer strands of clay. And I'm going to keep them in those bunches, and I just kind of grab them and kind of pull them off in those bunches, and I'm just laying them down on my work surface here. And then I can go anywhere that I'm going to add the hair, and I'm going to score that whole area. I don't have to score each individual strand of clay. That would be a little ridiculous. But then I'll take and add some slip into the areas where I'm going to add on the hair. And then I'll kind of pull some of these apart. And I always take the end of it and I kind of tuck it up underneath the hat and then have it come down on the witch. And I kind of bunch them up a little bit, have them overlap so that they aren't perfectly straight coming down. She's a witch. She doesn't have perfect hair. If you need to add a coil here and there to fill in, you can do individual coils as well. And just continue to work your way around both sides, kind of tucking the end up under the hat and then bringing it down. I'm going to do a little bit more on the other side. I won't do all of the hair on here. I just want to do enough so that you guys get the idea that you would work your way all the way around to the back side with the coils. If I have extra on the bottom, if it's a little bit too long, I can break those off. I can take the rib and kind of cut those off. Try not to have a bunch of coils laying down off of the piece, because as you handle it and pick it up and set it down, those coils will tend to want to break off pretty easily. Just going to add a few more coils back here. The hair, when you do gnomes, it's basically the same thing doing the hair on the gnomes as well. Let me look here and see. Janine said she's not seeing any comments coming up, and I haven't scrolled down. Yeah, Peggy was the last one. 7 minutes ago, it looks like. So a few more coils here I'm just going to use up on this side. My water is blue.
Where?
I'm not sure where you're seeing blue.
Oh, it does look. It's just the it looks it does look blue when you put the slip on. Like watching the camera.
The
it's
slip.
It's the slip,
That's
but it's just a weird like thing with the camera. Like the color just looks weird.
It's coming out more blue.
Like when you brush it on next, just see what it looks like. It does look blue. It's like a dark, it's gray, but it does have.
Yeah, and it is more blue looking against the clay. Okay, yeah, and that's actually the slip that I'm working with. It's a lighter color, but it fires the same and it shrinks, at the same rate. So then the next thing to do is to do arms or hands and feet. I'm gonna grab some more clay here.
That slip isn't made from another clay. It's
that slip is made from another clay,
okay.
And it's my casting slip, but I know that it shrinks at the same rate as this raccoon clay, so it's not going to let go on there. To make hands and arms, we take and I do what I call a paddle, and it depends how long you want the arms and the hands. This is the same technique as doing the gnomes, and so I don't want her arms on this one to be super duper long, so I make basically this paddle shape, and then I take a needle tool and I have it rounded at the end, because generally your fingers, if I can do this, it's kind of rounded. So then I cut with the needle tool, and I cut and I do the thumb, the pointer finger, naughty finger, ring finger, and pinky on there. And so I cut it into 5 things. And Janine's over there kind of laughing at my description of the fingers, but
it's
I
tall
always...
man.
It's what?
Tall man.
Tall man. In the middle, not naughty finger. But I say that in my head as I'm doing it, because I can't tell you how many times I've had 6 fingers, and in workshops I've had people have 6 and 7 fingers because they're just not paying attention to what they're doing, and they think that they need 5 cuts in there when 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 4 cuts to get the 5 fingers. So a lot of times people cut 5 and then they end up with 6 fingers, and it's a little crazy. So then I just kind of go and I work each of the fingers, and I kind of pinch them, keeping in mind this is a witch. She's probably not going to have manicured fingers. I'll use my thumb to kind of smooth it. So the rougher and more gnarly her fingers and her hand, the better. You can use a wooden tool to kind of get in between the fingers to kind of round it in between. You can bring them to a little bit more of a point to make her a little bit more wicked. If you find that one finger is longer than it needs to be, you can always break off the end of it and make it a little bit shorter. But I will then kind of put those back together, and that is my hand. And I've had people sit there and make little indentations for fingernails and stuff. That's great. You want to put rings on her finger, go for it. But that's the basic way that I make an arm. Now when I add it onto the piece, we're going to actually put a hole in there and add that on. But I'm going to set the arm, and I'm just going to do one of them to show you guys. I'm going to set that aside, and we're go to making her boot. And so her boots are also just started out as a chunk of clay, and I bring one end of it to a point for the tip of her boot, and then I kind of bring down the heel of the boot, and then I kind of pinch up on the top here to make what would be the top of her boot or her leg. And you can make that as long as you want. You can have her leg sticking out as far as you want. You can make the tip of this as pointy and as twisted as you want. Even though we're in a completely different part of the house, we can still hear Daisy yipping up at the top of the basement steps. Huh? No. Well, she actually might be down at the bottom of the steps. You can make it on. Yeah. She gets very jealous when we're doing the lives because she can't be in here with us. We had them in here one time for the lives, and they were running around and wrestling under the tables. We've got 3 dogs, and they were running around wrestling under the tables, and I was afraid they were going to get all the cables and start pulling the lights down and laptop cables and everything. So this is her basic shoe. Now you could make a little buckle and stuff on there if you want, and then these will get added on to the front. Again, you'll score the top of this. You're going to score where this is going to get added on. I'm going to put slip between the 2 parts, and I'm going to wiggle as I attach that to get it to lock into place. And I would do 2 boots, 1 on each side. To add on the arms, I'm going to take this wooden tool, and I'm actually going to go in and I'm going to drill a hole all the way through, and I make this arm a little bit longer than it needs to be so that I can slip and stick that into the inside of that opening. So I've added slip, I'm going to put it into that opening, and I'm going to press around there to make sure that's all attached, and then bring her hand around, or we'll have her hand kind of coming out, and we'll maybe have a little clay frog or something in her hand that she'll be holding, or a little crystal ball or something. So there'll be another boot, another arm coming out on that side, and that is basically how your witch is done. Now, when you want to fire her, people always ask, well, how long should she dry? And that's always a really good question. But it really depends on your conditions of how your pieces are allowed to dry. So when you leave them sitting, naturally in your house, I usually say let them dry for about a week, and then if you can put them on top of the kiln when you're firing pieces, do that, because that heat will heat up the rest of the piece and get any moisture out of there, and then fire it soon after that. If your kilns are out in your garage, or they're out in a shed, or somewhere that isn't heated and air conditioned and controlled temperature, they can collect humidity. So my kilns, some of my kilns are in a room that's not heated and air conditioned, and it's kind of exposed to the outside. And if I put those pieces on top of the kiln and I heat them and they dry, and then I let them set for a few more days and it gets real damp and humid, that clay is going to take on moisture again. And so the piece won't be completely dry. So you want to, that's why I say fire it shortly after you get it completely dry sitting on top of the kiln. Fire it to the temperature for the clay body you're working with, whether you're working with low fire or mid-range clay, you're probably going to do like an 04 firing. The paper that's left on the inside, that will burn away in firing if you don't remove it. If you don't have vents on your kiln and your kiln is in an enclosed room inside your house or in your studio, you might want to pull that paper out because it will create smoke on those pieces when it's fired, or it will create smoke in the kiln when it's fired. So vents are great on kilns for getting that out as well. So if we have any other
Let me
questions,
see a close up of it. And someone wanted to know when you take her off the mold. She must have begun. If you go back,
if
and
you go
watch
back
the
to the
beginning of the
beginning.
video, you'll see that when
Yep.
he takes her off.
and right now the eyes look really silly. They look like these giant eyes on there, but if I hold up the finished piece, and her eyes aren't quite as big on here, but once you have them painted in, they look a whole lot better. Now painting this one was done with acrylics, and so it was all done with black and then dry brush. You could do techniques with fired finishes, products like stroke and coat, concepts, fun strokes, would work great on here. Basically black, I did dots on the hat. There's a lot of clay fingerprints on here from me, but dots on the hat I did with purple and some copper. I dry brushed some copper on the medallion. Did green, a couple different shades of green on her face. Her hair, I went with gray and white. And then I dry brushed some purple and a little bit of the copper on that strip going around her hat as well. And then painted the eyes in. And then I dry brushed some blush color on her mouth and her boot. I did paint, I don't know if I can show you that. I did paint the little buckle on her boot there as well. I did make a little bowl, and I was going to put some little frogs and stuff in that bowl, and I never got around to doing that, but I just got a mold for some little frogs, and so I'm going to do some cast frogs in there to fill that in. All right. Any questions on the witch?
There's one question about you don't go inside the cone and.
Oh, to rework the arm attachment? You could, but this piece is pretty soft, and so when you're working with it and you have to tip it, if people start laying it on its side, it's going to have an effect there. It would not hurt to go on the inside and work that arm. I'm going to see if I can get this up on the camera without destroying her, that you can see her arm is coming in on the inside right there. I could go in there and I could squish that down to work it in, and would give it an even better adhesion to the piece. But in a workshop, it would be really hard for people, especially when they're doing the tall witches, to get that to work that way. All right. Any other questions on the? All right. So I want to show you guys a couple other things tonight, and I want to talk to you about doing a witch's hat. In the promo, I showed a picture of a witch's hat that I had turned into a little cottage, and that was done basically making your cone shape, taking it off the cone, twisting the top, and then making a slab of clay to be the rim of the hat. And then I added little shutters, and I cut out windows and stuff on there, and I put little fences, and I used the little mini extruders to kind of make little foliage that would go around on that piece. And I made little clay pumpkins that sat around on there. You'll see that picture, and I'll post a picture of it in the comments here after we're done with the live tonight. But I've had this idea in my mind that I thought would be really cool, would be doing that witch's hat, and then around the rim of the witch's hat using the rubber leaf forms, and I've used these in several lives, and you can go back and you can see the lives of how to make these leaves. But picture doing a witch's hat with this big rim on it, and I'm going to go over in a minute. I'm going to roll a slab of clay and show you the slab roller and how that works. But then making these dimensional leaves that would go around on that piece. So I'm going to show you that in a minute. I've had a lot of people asking about the blue texture tool and exactly how is that used. So I wanted to show you guys that tonight as well real quickly, how that works, and then talk to you about a mender that I discovered not too long ago that is a pretty cool product. And so when you clean your pieces, and a lot of times it's the clay magic pieces that have this bumpy texture, so a lot of the animals, the bunnies, the bears and things, when you take away that seam line and you scrape that away, you usually end up with a smooth area, and you lose that texture. And so I'm just going to scrape away some of this and show you what I mean. So I've scraped away in this area, and it's real smooth. And so then if I sponged over it, it would get even smoother. So this tool has two different ends. There's a larger end and there's a smaller end. The larger end you're going to use, and you roll over that area, and it will add the texture back in. And if I just kind of lightly blow on there, I'm not sure how clear this is going to come out in the camera, but it adds that texture back in. Now, when I get into a tight area like this in between here, that's when I'll use the smaller end, because sometimes that bigger end just kind of gets caught and can't roll very freely in here. And so that smaller end is good for getting into tight areas. Now, sometimes depending on the wear on your mold, I'm going to turn the camera up here and try to show it this way. Depending on the wear of your mold, sometimes that roller will put deeper texture than what your wear actually had. And if that happens, you can just go back with a damp sponge and lightly dab the sponge on there to tone down the texture that this tool adds back in. But that's really how this tool is used. It's for adding texture back. And I've had a lot of people ask, will it work to texture moist clay? And that's a good question, and I haven't tried it yet. So I'm going to flatten out a piece of clay here, and we will give it a shot. I suspect it will. Let me lay it flat here and do it. And yeah, I get really nice texture in this piece of clay as well. So it will work in wet clay. So if you're doing like production casting and you're making a lot of these pieces and turning them into bisque, you could actually scrape those seams away when the piece comes out of the mold and use this texture tool to go right back in there to adding the texture into the piece. Or if you're building pieces with wet clay, if I wanted to, not that I want to texture her nose, but I could go and I could roll this over and add texture to any areas that I want. This tool is designed, it's got a brass bar in the middle so that these ends roll freely. So as I put that on a surface, that roller can roll. This isn't stationary where you have to try to roll your hand to get it to roll. That's what makes this tool really unique, is that roller, that these ends roll freely when you use it on there. So these we've been waiting for to come in. They finally came in. Everybody who had them ordered, your orders have shipped except for one person that I have to contact that haven't paid for their order yet. But all of those have shipped, and we still have those in stock. I wanted to talk to you about a mender that I found recently at a show. I was down in Florida, and this Easy Do Mender, and I met the gentleman who owns this company, and over the years I've used lots of different mending products, and some of them work, some of them don't work very well, and I was skeptical of this, and I bought a bottle of it, and I tried it, and I was really surprised at how well this worked, because a lot of times when I would attach pieces together, they wouldn't hold very well, and sometimes when they come out of the kiln, the pieces would break off real easily again, and this actually holds super duper well. And so then I caught up with him at the Milwaukee show a few weeks ago and got a whole bunch of this from him, and we've got this on our website now. And so I'm going to actually take, and I'm going to break this piece. I'm going to snap this horn off of here. This is greenware, and this will work on greenware or bisque. And so your little cup of slip that you've got, you mix 3 parts of slip to 1 part of the Easy Mender. It comes in a nice little squeeze bottle. You put that in there and you stir that up, and it doesn't really change the consistency of the slip. It doesn't really thicken it. It doesn't really thin it. It just kind of stays the same, and you don't really notice anything different. There really isn't an odor to this. But then you take and you dampen both sides where the break is with this. And the thing I like too is with that squeeze bottle, I'm not putting this into a cup and dipping a brush into it and wasting a lot of it. I'm squeezing this right onto where the break is. And some people will say, well, can't you use water? You could use water to dampen both sides of this, but the Mender has chemicals in it that help it bond better to itself. So I'm going to flip the camera back down here on this.
What temperature does that go to in earthenware only, or cone 6?
Well, the funny thing is he has one for earthenware and he has one for mid-range and high fire, cone all the way up to cone 10. And it's the same product, he puts a different coloring in it. So this one says it's for earthenware, but he kind of laughed and he said it'll actually work. People who do high fire and mid-range kind of want something that's specific to them, and earthenware wants stuff that's specific to them, but it is the same product in both bottles, just a different coloring.
What's the name of the company again for that?
It's Easy Do Mender, and I've got it on our website, learnfiredarts.com. We've got it for sale on there. So I took a little bit of that solution. So I mixed it with the slip that these pieces were cast with. I dabbed a little bit on both sides and put the 2 pieces together, hold it for a few seconds. I can go over and I can brush some of this over where that break was if there's a little bit of a gap in there or a little bit of a bump. And it is amazing how well this holds. Now I obviously can't pick this piece up by this end or it'll break off again, but I'm taking and I'm wiggling this, and this is not snapping off as I wiggle it. And most menders, when I would do that, they would snap off really easily. And so I really am impressed with this mender. You can also use it on bisque doing the same thing. Wet both sides of your break with this, or if you have a crack in a piece, wet it, fill it in with the slip solution. The nice thing about this too is you do it with the slip that the pieces are made with. So if you're working with a mid-range and it's a moist clay body and you have a piece that breaks, let some of this dry up, add it to water, add the Easy Mender to it, and make your own slip solution. Some of you may be aware that the talc mine in Texas, where most of the slip manufacturers were getting their talc for making slip, is no longer selling slip or talc to the slip manufacturers. And so most of the slip manufacturers are scrambling right now to reformulate their slips to work with all the glazes, and there's a lot that goes into it. And so Mako just informed us that their slip is going to be changing from this gray color to more of a buff color. And instead of when it's fired, instead of it turning white, it's actually going to stay more of a buff color. So a lot of those mending products that are on the market that are made with white slip are now really not going to work well because they're made with a slip that fires out to a different color, and it makes it really obvious then that you've repaired a piece, and especially if you use...
There's a question actually about that. If it fires the same color as the clay, because this fix fires bright white.
Right, and that's what will happen if you use a lot of those mending products that are on the market, and especially with the slips changing now and the colors are going to change, it's going to fire out bright white. So this is made with the slip that these pieces are made with, and so you don't have a change in color. And that was kind of my point with the slips changing now. you'll be making it with that slip instead of buying a product that's all mixed. So this can be mixed with any clay body, any slip to make a mender. And then I would just keep this in a little cup that's got a lid on it and use it when I need it. And so I'll have a slip that I'll make with my raku clay body. I'll have stoner ones, and I'll have different versions of those slips, all using just that one product. And it's on sale on our website right now. I want to say $4.99, $5.99 for a bottle. And I've been using this for quite a while now, and I've hardly used any out of this bottle. It goes a long way. So that'll probably last me a year, one bottle of it. So that is on the website now. All right, so those are those products. I'm going to set those aside here. I just want to show you guys the slab roller and kind of rolling slabs. For those of you who haven't worked with a slab roller, I can actually spin the camera around here. One of the advantages to being out in the studio is I can go like this now, and I can turn the camera this way, and I can flip the computer around so I can actually see myself as I'm doing this. The other day as I was practicing this, I flipped the laptop around and it hit the pole that the camera is on, and it happened to be where the power switch was on the side of the laptop, and everything went black. And I'm like, what did I just do? And then I realized it actually bumped the button that turns it on and off. So I've got this Shimpo slab roller here, and what's really nice about this slab roller is it's very portable and it's adjustable for thickness. And so on the side here, I'm going to push this up so that you guys can see somewhere here. I gotta lift this up because the handle is preventing me from getting on the table. So along the side here is a gauge that tells you the thickness of the clay. And there's levers on each side of this that lock this mechanism in place. And so as I turn this and I come up with it, it makes the roller come higher all the way up to an inch thick slab. And as I go down with it, it makes the slab thinner. So I can adjust this to whatever thickness. So if I want a 1/2 inch slab, I adjust it here, lock the handles in on both sides, and then there is a board that goes in between the rollers, and it comes with 2 sheets of canvas. Canvas is great, but canvas will leave texture on your clay, and you'll see a lot of times I'm working with these foam pads, and so I'll use 2 of these foam pads with a slab roller, and I can take a piece of clay, and I've got a piece here that I kind of flattened out a little bit just by dropping the bag. A lot of times I'll flatten these out just by dropping the bag on the floor. So I've got this thinned just a little bit, and I can put that on this piece of foam. And I'll move this back here, put the other piece of foam on top. Now normally if I've got a real thick piece of clay, I'll actually start out with the roller up at the full inch, because if I try to force an inch and a half thick piece of clay through here, it often won't go through. It'll get hung up and not go through all the way because the clay gets caught up on this side of the roller because it's too thick. So there is a handle here that turns, and I can turn the slab roller, and it brings the board right through with the slab. If I lift it up, I've now got a 1 inch thick slab of clay. I can take and I'm knocking some other stuff over here. I can take them and lower this down to 3/4 of an inch, and I can roll it back through the other way, and it will thin it a little bit more. And then I can take it all the way down to my 1/2 inch. And these sections here pull out so that it keeps your board kind of level. Oops. That's kind of curling up there as I go through. I roll it back through, and now I've got a nice slab of clay that is a 1/2 inch thick. And this is where, if I was doing a witch's hat, I could take this, pretend this is a clay piece that I've made on a cone, and then I can go around and I can cut out the edge of this to be as big as I want the rim of the hat to be, just by going around like this.
Have you ever used slab molds? Someone has a full-size Shimpo slab, someone has a full-size Shimpo slab roller. Have you ever used slab mats?
Yeah, the slab mats are great because they too are also smooth, and they do not absorb moisture as much as canvas. Yep, I really do like the slab mats. This craft foam, you get 12 packs of this at Walmart and Michael's, and they're less than $1 a sheet for these. And they're nice, they're flexible, they're easy to wash off. The slab mat is great, it's a little bit pricier. So now picture if this is my witch's hat and I've got my slab, I'm going to go along and I'm going to pinch the edges of this to kind of thin it and ruffle it. And again, the rim of the hat doesn't have to be perfectly round. I can make it more round if I want. And if this was my clay piece, I would attach this, score it, and slip it under here. And then picture making leaves. And so, like I said, there is a whole video on these rubber leaves. So I'm just going to quickly make one of these leaves and show you what I'm thinking of doing. And I just haven't had time to do this, but I thought tonight would be a good opportunity to show you something that's been in my head for a while to do. And I also, not only these as just witches' hats to have setting around or to put holes in to do lights. A while back I did the tool night where we talked about the punches, like the star punches. Picture this clay piece, punching stars into this, putting a light underneath it, putting a candle under it, but then putting leaves all around this piece, different clay leaves going around, and making little clay acorns and berries and things to put around on that hat. So one of these days I'll actually get the time to sit and do it, maybe tonight, maybe not tonight, and make a clay hat. And then the inside of this I can cut out so that I can put a candle or a light under it if I put holes in this piece. Or you may have seen my post of the different pumpkins. Picture this as a witch's hat on a big clay pumpkin. I did one with the nose and eyes on it, and so I want to make witches' hats to go on pumpkins as well. So that's one of the projects that I've got in my head that I'm going to do at some point when I have time. We did add the slab roller now. We do have this available on our website. We've got these in stock right now. If we run out, we do have more inventory coming. And these, the slab rollers, are on sale for $560, and that gives free shipping in the U.S. 48 states. We also have added, we brought back the Shimpo, the banding wheel. If you guys have not experienced this banding wheel, this is an awesome banding wheel. It's 17 pounds, but it's weighted. You can get your hand under it. It's easy to spin, and once you spin it, it just keeps going and going and going. We've got these in stock now, and they are on sale for $136 with free shipping. The shipping on these is about $40 a piece for shipping because of the weight and the size box that they need to go in. So a lot of that cost is the shipping. It's not really free, you're actually paying for it, but look at that wheel just keeps spinning. So if you're looking for a great banding wheel, that is a great option for banding. We've also added pottery wheels that I'll talk about in another live. So I'm going to flip the camera back around. Well, I don't really need to flip the camera back around because I can just have Janine hand me the bowl with the... What's that? Okay. I've got
Let
the.
it spin around. Wait, no, I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah, here we'll put it on the end and spin it. I want to go too fast with it because it will spin it around. I can hold my hand in there and drop these down in so they get mixed up really well.
Are
Reach
clones
down there.
coming soon? Someone asked.
We don't have information on films yet. And the winner of the mystery box tonight is Tanya Armstrong. If you're in here, Tanya, let us know that you're here. I'm going to open the mystery box up so you guys can see
She wasn't the one who said she was leaving early lunch.
what's in here. And Tanya, if you decide that you don't want this, you can, we'll just draw another name once you see what's in here if you don't want it. So I said it has nothing to do with tonight. These are a lot of new items that we've added on the website. We've got a 6-well pallet is in this box for you, a reusable pallet. There is a really nice apron. This is a canvas apron, and these aprons fit me really well. They have an adjustable strap on the neck that slide up and down, and it's got a plastic coating on the back side. So even if you get it wet while you're working, it won't go through onto your clothes. And it's got a nice pocket in the front.
She's here.
She is here, all right. You also have an assortment of ceramic brushes, fan brushes, rounds, flats, washes. There's 24 different brushes in here. They're all acrylic handles, all soft natural hair. Got a bottle of the Easy Do Mender is in here as well. So it does have a little bit to do with tonight. It has a set of the Ultimate Liner brushes. I showed these several weeks back. We sold out of these, got more in, sold out of them, got more in, sold out of them. We have them back in stock now. Anybody who had these on order, all of those orders have shipped. So there's 3 different liners. These hold tons of color, and I showed it just going on and on and on without running out of color. Ooh, there's some new leaves. We've added poinsettia leaves to our offering, and we're going to be doing a really cool, we've got a new mold coming out for, and I'll show you the sample of the shape. This is a new oval shape cone that we're going to be coming out with. It'll also have a foot on it, and we're going to be doing poinsettia trees for the holidays. So we've added these poinsettia leaves, and we'll do multiple sizes of those cones. There's a set of the poinsettia leaves are in here for doing that, and I've got ideas for wreaths and other stuff that we're going to do. Got one of the blue texture tools is in here as well. And then you've got this cool folding palette. And I've got one open here that I'll show you. And this is a palette that was really designed for like watercolor. But I got to thinking about things like Easy Strokes and Paula's color concentrates. A lot of times you squeeze these colors out onto a tile and you don't use all of the color and then you wash it away. You could actually take these colors and squeeze them into this palette, and I've got some of my colors here, and you can let them dry because these colors will reconstitute with water, so I can create an entire palette of all of the colors, and then I could mark even across here with like a Sharpie marker what the colors are in each spot. Let it dry and go with water, just like a watercolor set, and pick up the colors and use them as you need them. So you don't waste color. These have a lock on top. There's areas for mixing colors on here. You can wash it off. You can leave the color there if you want to use it another time. There's holes in here for holding brushes, and this was designed for if somebody was standing, there's an opening here to hold on to that this little thing pops up that makes it easy to hold on to work with. But I could just close this up, let the colors dry in there, and I've got basically watercolor using things like color concentrates. And also in this box is a whole bunch of different color concentrate colors to get you started with your palette of color. So let us know, Tanya, if that is something that you want. If you don't want that, I'm sure somebody else will.
Yeah.
And we do have all of those items are on our website except for the apron. That'll be going on later tonight. I didn't get that added on, but the mender is on there. The brushes, the poinsettia leaves are on there. The palette is on there. All of those products are on our website. So we're just going to wait to see if Tanya types in that she wants that, and if not, we will draw another name out. I wanted to put a slab roller in the mystery box tonight, but it didn't fit in the box. Sorry, you guys, that we couldn't fit that in. Or a banding wheel. I wish the post office would come out with another flat rate box that banding wheel would fit in. The other day I took a bunch of clay, 50-pound boxes of clay to the post office, and the poor lady working behind the desk had to get somebody else to lift it, and I'm like, do you want me to come around and help you lift that down? And she had some surgery on her hands, and she's like, no, I'm going to get somebody else in the back to move it for me. So, okay, I see that she'll take it. All right. So if there aren't any other questions tonight, thanks you guys for joining us. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. I haven't decided yet what I'm doing. I've got a whole list of projects and stuff coming up, some new ideas, some really cool stuff with the leaves, and some new round shapes and vases and stuff. We're finally getting ahead. We actually had orders that have come in the last couple of days. We're down to about 15 orders here, where we're just waiting for some parts and pieces, a couple stamps and some leaves and a few things to come in. And we're getting ahead. And in the last couple of days, when orders have come in, we've been able to pull them and pack them the same day. So I won't promise that on everything, but we're finally getting ahead on molds, and I'll actually have time to sit down and create some new stuff. So thanks for joining us tonight, and take care, and we will see you back here in a couple of weeks.